some music on. Super duper. Right. Well, folks, here we are. Leaders Live once again. It's a Tuesday. So just counting down. This is my usual music. For those of you that are regular on this show, you'll know that this is my Uncle Peter doing a minor blues. Love this track. I've claimed it as my own, and he's quite happy with that, actually. I'm just waiting for the feed to come up, actually. So, and there it is. Great. Oh, and here we go. Right, so there's the feed up. Lovely. Super. So I've got the amazing Sonia Home with us today. She's a board director of See Me, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And we're talking about profiling today. So welcome, wherever you are in the world, and whether you're just getting up or whether it's the middle of your day or the middle of your morning or in the evening, depending where you are in the world, you're more than welcome. I know I call this the breakfast show, but it's pretty much breakfast time in the UK. So that's where the name comes from. So, and here we are. So let's just turn the music down. There we go. So, well, hi, Sonia, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, great to be with you.
Brilliant, yeah. Great to be with you. Yeah, brilliant. So look, I'll come back to you in a minute, Sonia, and I'll give you a formal introduction in a little while too. So it's a Tuesday, folks. We're in the UK. It's 8:45 in the morning, so 8:45, and we are live. I love that expression. We're streaming out on multiple channels today. If it all glues together, and who knows, but we're doing LinkedIn, YouTube, 2 Facebook private group, well, 1 private group, 1 public group. We're doing Twitter, if that all glues together. As I said before, I haven't got a clue how this all works, but it somehow magically all comes together. So, good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, welcome wherever you are in the world, as I said earlier. This is the Leaders Live Breakfast Show. So today I'm joined by profiling expert Sonia Home. We'll be talking about understanding, folks, how people tick using and applying behavioural preference profiles. And glad to have Sonia on the show today, and we're going to come back to her in just a tick, as I said, to introduce her more formally in a moment. Just a quick teaser for you, folks. So we will explore today, in the context of the post-pandemic world that we are suddenly finding ourselves in this new normal world, folks, online and in person working, we are finding that more than ever the people factor and high performance teamwork will become a critical leadership factor. So how do behaviour profiling preference tools help us to better lead high performance people and to manage teams? And what are the core building blocks to identify our preferences and our tendencies? And how do such tools help us to identify our strengths and manage our blind spots and help us in challenging situations? Folks, all this and a whole lot more in this live interview chat. If you don't know me, I'm Andrew Jenkins. If you're new to Leaders Live, please say hello in the comments. We'll pick up the comments. And good morning to Andrea Hall, by the way. Finally made it, she says. Yeah, brilliant to see you, Andrea. Great. Thank you. So the comments are streaming through. That's always good. And always, as always, folks, we love to interact and engage and chat with you all. And especially, please ask us loads of questions. If you want to put a Q in front of that, then that's helpful for us to pull out the comments. Smash those likes too, folks, and the thumbs up. We'd really like that. It keeps us motivated and keeps us moving for you guys. And please subscribe to Leaders Live and or my brand new website I'm so proud of, for notifications and or YouTube links. And they'll all be in the description later on. So please let me know if our audio is coming through okay too. And let me just quickly introduce Sonia as I come back to her right. So Sonia, let me do a quick intro for you. Sonia Home is an experienced board director. She's a board director of See Me, Colour Profiling. She's been CEO as well of that organisation, as well as a consultant, a coach, and she's focused on growing people and growing organisations. And she and her colleagues, they trained me a couple of years back to deliver the See Me profiling tools as well. Simon Hodgkinson says, good to be here. I'm glad to have you here too. So, super. Over to you, Sonia. How you doing again?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Andrew. Brilliant to
Brilliant.
be here with you this morning,
Yeah,
and
likewise.
to explore this area and help people really think about, yeah, as you say, how they lead, who they are, and how they can then get the best out of others from that place.
Yeah, and Simon Hodgkin says this interesting topics today with Sonia and Andrew. Yep, thank you. Thank you, Simon. Brilliant. Yeah, so here we go then. So when it comes to grouping people, I'm very careful with my language here, and into sort of preference types or preferred ways of doing things. What are the core building blocks to identify the kind of language expressing our behaviours and the combinations of our behaviours and temperaments that make us unique? What say you, Sonia?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you used that word unique, Andrew, because I think that's a really important place to start, is to remember that whilst it can be really helpful to have a kind of roadmap to explore differences with each other and to give us some kind of frame for that, we are all unique, we're all individual, and I think all of these tools just need to be held with that in mind, that each person has their own way of being. And the last thing we want to do with any of this is to box people. This is simply to give us a language, some way of describing difference, particularly that has no value judgment. I think that's really important. Sometimes when we're talking about who we are, and how other people are, and particularly the difference, we can fall into language that can sound a judgmental description. So the language that I prefer to use is one that hopefully carries no value judgment, which is that of different colours describing different preferences.
Different colours.
So we use the language of 4 colours to describe 4 kind of basic styles. Of which we are all a blend. And one of the lovely things about colours is that they do blend.
Right.
Other systems use letters. Letters are harder to blend. And they can, if you start attributing people a number or a title or a letter, it can feel a bit more boxy. Whereas colours, we know that we play with them on a palette, they're fluid. So we use this language of 4 colours as the basic building blocks, recognising that actually we're all a unique blend of those colours. So I think you've got a slide just introducing us to this language so that we can refer to it in our conversation and people have some idea what we're talking about.
Let's go and have a look at that. Is it this one here, Sonia, or is it the one after that?
That's the right.
That's the right one.
This is
Super.
just the overview of what those colours are, how they play out. So you can see we've got there that blue preference, which is fairly kind of detail oriented, always asking the question why. We've got the red, which is very kind of goal orientated, driving forward, probably asking the question, where are we going? What impact are we going to make? What's the point? We've got the yellow there, bringing that kind of positive energy and enthusiasm, saying, who are we going with? Very interested in the team and that kind of forward momentum and doing it together. And then that green, which is more the reflective, more still the people and the who, but in a much more kind of reflective way, and possibly a little bit of the go slow to temper the red's drive forward there. So these 4 colours, again, we're all a blend. Most of us will be dominantly a blend of 2. You may be looking at that and able to pull out your top 2. I'd encourage you to do that, to think which would be my top 2 there. And we do, when we read these through a questionnaire, we display them on a graph, which shows that individualised readout. And actually, we do that in 2 ways. Andrew, I think you've got your little mini graph there showing your red, yellow.
Oh, yes, you mean my Lego bricks, you mean. Here's my Lego bricks, folks. Yeah.
There it is, to see that sort of red-yellow combination, which loves doing things like this, loves to energise and enthuse others. And just very briefly, we don't want to spend too much on the back end here. We want to get this applied to you guys straight away. But just briefly, so those of you who know other systems can map this onto those that you know and love.
And that's important.
We've got just a couple of visuals, I think, showing how this maps to Jungian axes, which is the main kind of back end, if you like.
We'll come to that right now. Let me just bring up a couple of comments while we just give you a pause for a minute. So Simon says, I experienced colour profiling several years ago and I was a little sceptical at first. Where is it? However, it was excellent and we learned so much and significantly helped us to operate more effectively as a board of directors. Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, really great to hear that. And people can get very sceptical over these things. Now, Patience Tucker might be a contact of yours there. Love the full colours. I've experienced something similar. Good to have an updated view. There you go. So that's Patience. So thank you, Patience, for that. And I've got a LinkedIn user here saying, this is a question to you, actually. This comes up quite commonly, actually, doesn't it? I don't know who this is, but
relate to other systems.
Right. Okay. So we're
absolutely, and actually, our next slide's going to help answer that question. If we go on to like that back end,
we will indeed.
We can see that these colours kind of originate from the 4 Jungian axes, with the thinking preference at the top there, the feeling at the bottom, extroverted at the right, and reflective on the left. And DISC likewise is built on that same system. 4 kind of quadrants, if you like. Obviously, the language used would be different. I talked earlier about judgment. I mean, I'm trained in DISC, and it's got a lot of good things going on for it. But to describe the red preference as dominant, I personally find that a little bit judgy. So I think for me, the fact that those letters don't blend, the fact that they have quite value-sounding names attached to them is less ideal, but yeah, in terms of the back end, if you know and love DISC, you can absolutely apply all that we're going to be talking about this morning using those same 4 quadrants.
Okay, so that's how they all map together then, is it? So from Myers-Briggs through to DISC through to
a lot of them are
name.
similar at the back end. Ours is just using updated statement base, a different algorithm on a kind of different system, and importantly, I think for us, that language of blend.
The language. Okay. Super. Okay, so that's that one there, Sonia. Let me just come back to you as a big picture. There we go. Okay, so how do these tools help us identify our strengths? How do they help us to manage our challenges, perhaps, and become aware of our blind spots and what holds us back? What say you, Sonia? Talk us through that. How do profiles help us with that?
The first point is the raising awareness. So I talked a little bit about how we measure these, and you showed your own graph statement, Simon, Andrew. And the next sort of step from there is to produce a personalised report, which describes those the strengths, the weaknesses, the blind spots, describes these in quite concrete statements. And again, this is something that we offer. Right? So our statement database, our algorithm sort of picks out the strengths which are most likely, based on your unique combination, to be yours, for you to then weigh and consider. And a lot of the time people will say, oh yeah, that's so true. That really, those 3 things, they just give me life and they give me energy. So in a sense, what we're doing there is sometimes naming things that people already know, or certainly that others around them know. If they share it with others in their team, they might say, yeah, that's so true. I've seen that in you, those strengths, and to be honest, those blind spots and weaknesses as well. So I think the first stage really through this is to help, once we've identified our combination of preferences, is to identify what does that mean in practice and raise our awareness of the things that give us life, that we love to do, which is what those strengths are, if you like. And then the things that are just harder work, that really suck the life out of us, and you always fall to the bottom of our list. I mean, one way of thinking of this is, if you've got your sort of to-do list of 10, what are the things that always fall to the bottom? Somehow you just never get there. And what we're doing here in a way is naming those, is saying, actually, that's not a coincidence. That's something to do with the kind of who you are, how you're made, those things that just don't give you energy in life. Well, the good news is that there's someone else out there that loves that stuff, for whom actually that's absolutely in their sweet spot. So this then links, I think, very quickly into thinking about who we have alongside us and how we can complement our leadership team with our weaknesses being someone else's strengths, and just celebrating those things in someone else that we struggle to celebrate in ourselves, perhaps.
I really love the way you've described that, and it sounds like it's almost like validating what we actually probably know about ourselves, but that the ability to illuminate that really helps to validate us, and we go, yeah, that is me, and we feel heard and listened to, don't we? Even through a profile, it's like, wow, this profile's really got me. And I quite often use this expression when I'm talking about these things, that you talked about strengths and our blind spots, or things we're not quite so natural at. And it's almost like, we let our light shine out of us, and that helps other people. And likewise for our flaws or our, less developed parts of ourselves, we can allow other people's light to shine into us. And that's the beauty of high performance teamwork that you have got difference and diversity of thought and style in our teams that help to complement each other. And the maturity of a high performance team is that we celebrate that from each other and not compete with each other, I guess, and just to realise that, you know, we have got different style preferences, and that's brilliant, because actually 2 and 2 don't equal 4, then they equal more than that when you put those combined strengths together.
Absolutely. And you talked there about sort of thought diversity, diversity in the way that we think and the way we approach things. And I think actually that's a form of diversity that sometimes gets a bit forgotten. We can focus too much on the externals, and that's a really important thing to do as well. But actually that diversity in our minds, if you like, in how we approach things is really vital. Partly actually from a sort of commercial point of view for managing risk, from an innovation point of view for making sure we're both moving forward and reflecting on the consequences. And just for our energy as leaders to have those different strengths on our team. And of course, that's not always easy. Perhaps we're painting this kind of utopian view of, all of these diverse strengths working together. And on an ideal day, absolutely. But that diversity does come with a rub, doesn't it? When people are very different from us, they may love the things we hate. We may approach things in a really creatively different way for innovation and risk management. But sometimes it can then be very hard to understand one another and to communicate well.
Right.
Just to approach things with alignment, I would say that is the challenge that diversity brings.
Yeah, because there can be a lot of energy that we need to spend on those differences in some ways, because they could be so different. It takes a while to kind of readjust and realign. Simon says this. So we found 3 really important areas. 1, who we thought we were. 2, who we actually are. And 3, how we can complement each other and how we can work better together. Highly recommend this, says Simon.
Thank you, Simon. And you've pulled out a really important thing there. Is actually on the reports we produce, we have 2 graphs, and one is the kind of quite conscious. Often we talk about it like a kind of a selfie. It's a picture of us, but it's a picture that we're quite conscious of. We're quite aware of. Perhaps, when we take a selfie, we might adjust the filters or whatever. A bit like that, Sonia. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think it might be upside down. But
is it? Oh, it's the wrong way around because the camera. Right, that's not going to work.
But the other one is the filters off. Is the documentary style picture across the room. Is the kind of hashtag no filter, revert to type. Where we go under pressure when we're very relaxed, and actually that difference of not just how we come across day to day, but our more you could say natural state in some ways that comes out under pressure, that we might see it as team when we're fighting fire or when we're very relaxed. In fact, that's really important to know as well. And the difference between the two, and for some people there won't be much difference. Actually, there'll be quite a lot of alignment. And for most people, it's just that the kind of revert to type profile is a lot more extreme. I think for the majority, their top colour just skyrockets. And even their others just drop off the radar entirely. So it's almost like a caricature of ourselves, which again, in terms of working with others, knowing that about each other and almost approaching that with kind of forgiveness, and when you see quite an extreme behaviour that can be hard to navigate, knowing, okay, maybe this person's under pressure, maybe they're just sort of operating on their right hand graph where there's hashtag no filter, and I just need to give them a beat today, or particularly as leaders to kind of think, okay, well, what's going on behind that, and other things I can do to relieve the pressure, I guess, and just think about how we move forward in a way that's more comfortable.
Okay, so is that when we're using, so you mentioned those 2 graphs of one's an adaptive behaviour, one's a natural behaviour.
That's right.
So just talk us through that and a little bit on the stress side there, because I was going to talk about stress. So into stress, what happens to our profile then? One of them skyrockets, is that right?
Often, I mean, not always, essentially modifying. Most of us modify our preferences day to day. We flex, we pull up our lower colours, if you like, and we dial down our higher ones. And that's great because it helps us to communicate with people of all preferences and to navigate the different things we need in life. But it takes energy. Modification takes energy. Flexing takes energy. So when we're stressed and we have less energy, or perhaps that we're in crisis management mode. Something's happened which is requiring our energy, whether that's stress or situations. That ability to modify kind of goes out the window. You don't have the energy for it.
Right.
And sometimes that's a conscious choice. I mean, often we're in that mode when we're with those we love, who know us really well, and we just feel like we don't have to bother. We can just kick off our shoes, if you like, and be in our sort of hashtag no filter selves.
No filter, you're right.
Sometimes it's a positive, sometimes it's a negative, but yeah, it does tend to manifest in a more, I guess, to use our language, a more extreme graph of colours.
Right.
But also, yeah, you just see people show up in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So helpful to be aware of, because for some people that will look like really withdrawing.
Yeah.
For others, it will be really, the opposite, leaning into conflict.
Leaning
maybe.
Straight in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Jung called it flipping, didn't he? Where the preferences all flip round. Yeah. So that sounds like a similar sort of algorithm there. So Elaine says, okay, good morning. First ever Leaders Live. Loving the topic. I can talk about DISC for days, says Elaine. And then she follows up with this comment here. Let me just pop it over here, just out of your forehead there a little bit. I use behaviour profiling in my health mentoring program because our behaviour affects our health. So interesting to see. That's a great, interesting comment, that actually. Yeah.
It really is. And I mean, we are whole beings, aren't we? Our health, our bodies, and the way we behave and our minds, it's all linked. So I think that's really helpful to highlight that actually this stuff can affect our health. And of course, for a lot of us, in terms of like lockdown and the way we've had to flex over the last 2 years, this has required different things from us.
And many of us found that we've flipped into those different preference types as well. You know, I found lockdown incredibly hard, particularly lockdown number 3, which I call number 33. And I was really struggling with that. And a number of people I've since found have had the same experience. Ledon says this. Let me just bring Ledon's coming up. Very important topic. Understanding behaviour profiling is crucial to achieving effective leadership. We're going to come on to leadership in a moment, Ledon. In organisations, it helps cross-cultural management integration. There's a posh word, eh? What say you, Sonia?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
That's really a lovely thing to highlight, that it really can help cross-cultural integration, partly because it highlights other areas of similarity and difference, perhaps. So, I mean, we see this sometimes in merger, if people have come from company A or company B and they may be wearing those hats. Actually, to say, instead of grouping ourselves by those hats, let's perhaps group ourselves by those who have a strong red preference or a strong blue preference, a strong green preference, to bring in a different way of looking at difference, be that post-merger or when you're trying to bridge different cultures equally.
Indeed.
I think it helps us understand again that difference can be as much in how we approach things and our behavioural preferences as in other perhaps more visual things or in terms of background. It's a different way of thinking about diversity, which I think can be more of a leveller. Yeah, often.
Yeah, and that cross-cultural integration, you know, as Ledon's talking about there, you know, and aligning across, or at least understanding. Is that something that you find with your own data when you look at the data of different cultures, Sonia, that the preferences, the colour preferences you can see by culture as well? Is that potentially possible?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think there are certainly trends.
Right, yeah, I suppose that's the better word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, and that's often to do with what's valued. So in some cultures, you might let's stereotype and say in America, red preference is seen as, you know, what you want to do and how you want to be, perhaps slightly. Whereas in Asian cultures, perhaps green preference leadership is valued more. Those values or those parodies, and I am stereotyping, I understand that, of what good leadership looks like, will affect what people aim for. So you do tend to see, for example, higher kind of red preference skew in the States, high green preference skew in parts of Asia. It's not going to apply to everyone, but it's just when we look at the overall percentages of these colours, there is a bit of a skew on that. And I think one of the things that highlights is there's no such thing as the right profile for leadership.
Right.
You know, actually, we should lead from where we are and who we are, and different cultures value that differently. And that highlights to us that actually there is value in all of those different approaches, and we need to celebrate each one. And different cultures have learned to do that better than others. But yeah, so there are trends, Andrew, but it won't be across the board, and in some places more than others.
Yeah, Elaine echoes what Ledden was saying. So true. I've used profiling in so many different scenarios in corporate settings. An invaluable tool for sure. And she goes on to say, in 25 years of using profiling, I've found that that few people can modify their behaviours more than 20%. Would love to understand more about that and connect with you later. So that's a thought. But have you got a quick thought on that yourself?
Yeah. How we modify and how we flex. It is hard work. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I mean, I think this is an advert for all those coaches out there. I do think having someone come alongside us and help us to think through that, and really to help us identify, okay, let's say I want to flex more into my green preference ways of communicating. What does that mean in practice? What practical steps am I going to take to do that? It really can be helpful to be accountable to someone in that, to ask others in our team maybe to observe us, to tell them our goals, and to get their feedback. How am I doing on that? You know, I've said that I want to, you know, perhaps dial down my style in this way and flex in that way. Give me feedback on that. So it's hard work. Absolutely, Elaine, it is. But even 20% can make a massive difference.
Oh yeah,
actually.
That's a huge difference actually. It doesn't sound a lot, does it? It's a big difference though. Mark says this, just to continue the conversation a little bit on leadership. We need to use all the colours to be effective leaders.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that we have to use all the colours all the time. I think what he means there is that actually in a leadership team, if we've got those different colours present, it really helps.
Yes, although I think we almost need to be ready to use all the different colours or different approaches ourselves as well. Some will be harder work than others, but if I'm talking to someone with a high green preference, even though actually that's my lowest colour, personally, I need to know what that looks like. I need to be ready and able to use that communication style and to be in that place. It would be inauthentic to spend 80% of my time there, but it's absolutely necessary to be able to spend 15% of my time there.
Thanks Mark. And that whole thing about curiosity there is really important, isn't it, in a leadership team? Is okay, so we've got someone with maybe a stronger green preference than yourself or myself maybe. It'd be really interesting to listen to that and to be open-eared to really understanding, well, what are they saying, because that viewpoint can be incredibly valuable because it's different from ours, right? And it gives us a new perspective. Okay.
Exactly. And we can learn so much from listening to people who approach the world really differently to ourselves. So enriching.
And I think that is where it becomes enriching for leadership. Now, this I don't know this person's name, is LinkedIn user it's coming to. So, you know, how is goal setting impacted by this model, Sonia?
Yeah, well, I think that's where Mark's point about the different colours working together is really important, because we will all set goals in different ways. And if you have a leadership team that's really skewed towards one colour, its goal setting will be very impacted by that. So if it's full of red preference, it will be very ambitious, for example, and perhaps over ambitious. I don't know. You know, if there's no blue preference, perhaps the how are we going to actually achieve this goal might not have been thought through practically and with enough detail. So I often think about whether it's goal setting or any form of strategic planning as a bit like a relay race where you're passing the baton.
Lovely.
You pass it around, and it might start with those with high yellow preference who are thinking about vision, and then be passed to the red to really kind of orientate that in impact and what are we trying to achieve. And then to the blue to think how are we going to get there? And then to the green to think, and how are we going to bring people with us and get them on board? And actually we need all of those perspectives to plan effectively, to set goals effectively, and to strategize well. I think there is I think that order works quite well. I think actually starting with those for whom the vision and the start point is a natural place for them can be better, but we need to remember to pass the baton on. I've been in too many leadership meetings where those people with the red and yellow preference just they cling on to the baton, they never let go of it. Actually, I think that's the role of the chair then, is to say, and now we're going to pick that baton up and we're going to pass it
to somebody else.
Particularly with the high green, we need to give them a voice to say, to speak their concerns about how will we bring people with us on this journey. What does this mean for our values as a company? Are we going too quickly? All of those questions need to be voiced to set goals effectively and realistically.
And I guess if you haven't got any red in the team or people with that stronger preference, then goal setting might be more challenging? I don't know. Would it be?
Absolutely. In that case, is it ambitious enough? Is it going fast enough? I think absolutely. Whatever you're lacking, that perspective will be evidenced in your goals. And if you're working on your own, and I know a lot of our community they're individual coaches and consultants, and I think that's where knowing your own style and being ready to moderate that is really important. So yes, if you are a naturally kind of blue-green leader and you work on your own, bring someone else in perhaps just to challenge you and say, is that fast enough? Is it ambitious enough?
Pacey enough? I love that.
What else could you do? And vice versa, if you're kind of in the red yellow, then bring someone really reflective alongside you to challenge you and ask those questions, their question. We need to know ourselves and our tendencies and make sure that either we can moderate or we can bring others alongside us who will ask those moderating questions.
And finally on this subject here, Elaine says, great, you talked about passing the baton a moment ago, Sonia. This is a nice link to that. De Bono's 6 thinking hats is a useful model when applying leadership alongside profiling. That's an excellent idea, that, isn't it? So we're going to wear a different hat, or we're going to pass the baton around. Two good metaphors really for just remembering to do exactly what you're saying. Now, when I'm doing profiling, preference behaviour profiling, I like to use it to build trust in a team and to slow everything down for a little while and for people to get to know each other. And profiling it's not the only thing to do here, but it's a really useful tool to build trust. How have you found that, Sonia, when you're thinking about building trust in a team and profiling?
It's such a good point, Andrew. I think sometimes the most valuable elements that come out of sharing, particularly, it's one thing doing a profile, but sharing it with others and being willing to do that, to be able to give this kind of readout of, in a way, who you are and how you roll to others. The vulnerability that can bring, the honesty, the authenticity, can be absolutely game-changing for a team. That I've been in lots of sessions where people have actually been quite emotional about having people affirm quite deeply who they are, being given a language that they can share who they are with one another in a new way. And I think that, that vulnerability and that naming of things and that celebration really of different styles and ways of being really can build trust. I think partly it frees us from the lie that we need to be all things to all people. I think there is still this myth that leaders need to be everything, and we can't be. We really can't. And actually being able to name, these are the things I can do and I can do really well. And these other things are hard for me and I need others. And there's a liberation that comes from that that's really important. For some people, the naming of what we can do well will be the harder bit of that, actually. And they need others to affirm them in that. And for others, naming the things they don't do well, that will be the harder bit. And we need to do both. We need to be honest, actually, about who we are and how we are with others.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, to build using this a tool like this is really useful for building trust, because it does both of those things. Both affirms the things that we're good at, but also allows us that space to perhaps admit or to talk about the bits that we're not so good at, and that vulnerability on both counts, both strengths and our the things that we find more difficult or more challenging to deal with, that vulnerability and that exposure of that is really helpful in a team. And that's what helps people to get to know each other at a human level, right? Not just a work level, because this is more than what we do, isn't it, Sonia? This is about who we are, really. And that comes back down to the point about high performance teamwork, that it's so often in teams we just do the doing, and we can get stuck in doing the doing. Whereas I think what is liberating and freeing is that when we understand who people are, particularly, well, at any level actually, but more so at a strategic leadership level, because that informs the culture, right? And if the leadership team can work on their own levels of trust and vulnerability, then again, that filters down the organisation, I guess, culturally.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking actually about one organisation we've worked with where they were doing a session with, it's a law firm with more junior lawyers coming in. And actually when they'd help people explore their own colour combinations, they put up a slide, a visual, which showed the senior leadership team around the wheel. And actually they were around. They were, there was a variety of different colour combinations. And I think that in itself was really liberating for those junior lawyers to say, actually, there's a variety of ways of leading in this organisation. And there's a variety of different styles that are celebrated here. Beautiful. And being able to almost look at, right, which are the people on the board or whatever it is, the leadership team who are perhaps most like me in my style. Lovely. And that's someone I can watch, and that's someone I can learn from. But that took quite a lot of vulnerability, I felt, on behalf of that leadership team, to be happy for that to be shared around, to be used in that way to liberate others. I mean, people talk a lot about the importance of having diversity on boards, just so others can aspire, can see themselves, the power of being able to see yourself in a room or in a place. I know for me, as I've been the only woman on several boards, and sometimes whilst I'm not always a fan of positive discrimination, I've sometimes felt that within a glass room, if people walk past and just see a woman in that room, maybe that's helpful for them in terms of their own aspirations. And I would say the same is true of colour preference, actually, that if you see a wheel with a variety of styles celebrated, maybe you can see yourself there, and maybe that helps you in your own growth, and particularly to be authentic in your leadership style. Because I think often the things that can really undermine leadership is when we try and be who we're not, and we think that good leadership looks, let's say, blue preference, and so we try to be that kind of leader when that's not.
We try to model what leadership's telling us, right? And if we see different parts of the wheel there, here's an interesting question. So does a low level of self-awareness impact effectiveness of this in a leadership team?
Oh no, I think that's the most fun, because actually it'll be the most revelatory. Because actually, if you go in with a quite low level of self-awareness, people are really like, whoa, this is naming a lot of stuff we hadn't thought about before, and this is if you like, it's a low bar that really raises up that awareness. Whereas on the other side, actually, if people have done a lot of self-development, for example, and have quite a high level of awareness, it's still effective, but the conversation will be more like, I know this about myself, and now I'm here to share this with others. I think actually having that called out is particularly important if there's a low natural awareness of that in a team.
Yeah, or actually even worse, if the team just don't bother doing it, and then there's that low level of awareness throughout the whole team, can be quite dysfunctional and quite toxic, I guess, which is where profiling becomes so useful, because it exposes more about who we are, not just what we do, and we're not hiding behind a role anymore, more so in leadership potentially. Now, you mentioned a little bit about leadership, so I'm just wondering, are these helpful for you to just discuss some of the things that you've just been talking about?
Yeah, these are just some phrases really and keywords around the wheel, looking at what authentic leadership might look like with those different blends. And actually, even if you can't read the text here, I think the thing to take away is that there are different words in different places, and we will have different styles and different approaches depending on where we sit around the wheel. And I mean, I think this is particularly interesting, maybe thinking about the last 18 months. I know if we look at the top one there around leadership strengths, that actually the need to connect and enthuse, I think particularly perhaps that's kind of 6 o'clock and 3 o'clock, those styles of leadership, that connection and that enthusiasm, those have been particularly needed. I think leaders in those spaces have been particularly helpful perhaps to those teams. Conversely, they're the people who found lockdown the hardest themselves and really struggled. So I think it's been a really mixed time for leaders sitting in those spaces who've really struggled, and yet what they bring naturally has been so needed. And for those perhaps more at the top and left of the wheel, I mean, perhaps it's been more comfortable because actually Zoom working is very productive. And it can be very efficient.
My wife and so.
We've quite liked being on our own quite a lot. But I think the challenge there is, but what about other people, and what do they need from you as a leader? And do they need you to just take a beat and connect and be relational and sacrifice the productivity? And my I guess what I would say is, I think right now, yes, we all need to, if we're more in a kind of 12 o'clock position in our leadership, we really need to be flexing to be more connected at the moment, because people are desperate to rebuild that.
That is so well put, and that explains some of my own struggles with the lockdown and why my wife's a very different colour to me, why she found lockdown fantastic because she could just get to work. And I found it debilitating. So that's a really good point. Thank you. We're going to move on very shortly, but I'm just going to pick up a couple of comments here because they're coming thick and fast here. So I know people love talking about leadership, but I always wonder, should everyone be a leader? Okay.
Oh, that's such an interesting question, isn't it? There's a lot of literature out there that would say everyone's a leader, in that leadership is about influence, and we all influence someone and others. And I don't know. I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but I do think that awareness of our spheres of influence, who we influence, how we influence, and calling that leadership, being aware that those are people that we lead, is important. Partly so we can do that the best we possibly can, really. We probably all do lead someone or some people, and we need to do that as kind of mindfully and effectively as we possibly can. In terms of, I guess, a lot of people would align that with position. Should we all have every position? Should we all be a CEO or a COO or whatever? I don't know. I think it's about finding the role fit that is life-giving for us and others.
I love that.
And worrying less about the label that's put on that.
Life-giving. Beautifully said that, actually. I really love that phrase, life-giving. It's quite a long one, this, but I think there's a question in here somewhere. I can't see the question mark. But I see goal setting as dissecting an onion, pulling back the layers. This also applies to behavioural profiling as well as understanding who we are. What are our strengths and weaknesses, and how can we be more effective working with others by understanding ourselves? I work on a paper focusing on cultural layers, behavioural profiling, understanding what influences our attributes. What factors and environment can help us to achieve best results? I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the question there is about effectiveness, is about productivity, and actually how knowing this can help us to be more effective, which would include environment, and context. I mean, how much control we have over that, I think, is a question. But even things like working environments, I mean, we're all giving more thought to that at the moment, aren't we? And it will be really different depending on levels of extroversion and reflection and I think
offices,
again, just kind of consciousness and being able to flex for others are good starting points.
Lovely. So Sonia, look, thank you. You know, we could just talk forever, and we're running out of time fast. And thank you for all the comments; they've been brilliant here. There's some. I might have a little bit of time just to pop another couple on in a moment. But so look, thanks, Sonia. Have you just got 3 quick tips to give us about profiling? What you'd think are the key things to take away here?
Sure. I mean, perhaps it's a summary of a lot of what we've said already. But my 3 points all begin with D, Andrew. It's helpful. Firstly, do what gives you life.
Do what gives you life.
Know
Beautiful.
It and do it. Secondly, delegate what doesn't. If it's all possible. I'm aware it's not always possible. And thirdly, dial down when you're depleted. So know what your depleted self looks like. In my case, that means not sending the email, waiting till tomorrow morning and rereading it. It'll mean different things for each of us. But do what gives you life, delegate what doesn't, and dial down when you're depleted. Wow.
So I love that. The 3 Ds. There you go, folks. 3 Ds for you. So thank you, Sonia. I'm just going to finish up very quickly now. So brilliant. Great session. Wow. Loads of energy in the room. And thank you for all the comments, folks. By the way, look, Sonia's freebie giveaway is free. Is 5 free profiles for the first 5 people who respond in the comments on the LinkedIn live event at the end of the live stream show. That's 5. So just saw you do that. So first 5 on the comments in the leadership, in the LinkedIn event session that you're now listening to. You just pop a comment in there, and Sonia will organise that for you. She'll need an email address, but you can do that separately through the DM features, and that's absolutely fine. So please pop your name in if you want that. So there's your freebie for you. I've got a couple more questions coming through. I'll come back to those in a moment. So just a quick thought for everybody. Look, from my from my side, I'm founder of a CEO community called Inspired CEOs. And if you're a CEO or a business owner with staff, then I'd love to invite you to a free week or two to join our community free of charge and experience our game-changing conversations and hot seats. And all you need to do is simply contact me for a discussion. I can see people already saying yes, please, to those comments straight away. So there you go. That's there's takers immediately for your stuff there then. Sonia, fantastic. So, and please contact me if you want to develop high performance team. I'm also fully accredited to administer the CME profiling tool that we've just been talking about with Sonia today as well. Quick word on Leaders Live before I tell you what's happening next week. So I set up Leaders Live with a purpose to edutain and explore high performance topics via kind of informal fun, back and forth with interesting people just like Sonia, with a mindset and a passion to help leaders and businesses succeed in these rapidly changing times we're living through. So and I do this because I believe this is really important for this generation of business leaders to really make change through the people factor. And it's all about I to the power of we, which is a phrase that I've coined and I really love. So the next Leaders Live will be Tuesday the 19th of October, and we'll be talking all things business branding, folks, with a business branding guru, Anthony Jones from We Are Ghost. So I think this topic will be really useful and interesting too, and I'm looking forward to it and hope that you will be too. So my usual phrase here is be there or be square, folks. So that comes to the end of this session. So it's a goodbye from me and a good day from Sonia. Thank you very much, folks. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Looks like we've got lots of comments as well, by the way, so I'll pick those up in a moment. So for those guys of you that are just have just said yes please to that, we'll pick those up after the session. So thank you to everybody. Cheers for now. Bye bye.